Undead Unluck is a series I constantly praise for its unique power system and interesting world, so it's no surprise that there are a lot of amazing fights that take advantage of both to create a captivating experience. And due to recent events in the manga, a whole new batch of potentially top tier fights were dropped on our plates, so before those start I decided to rank what I believe are the 10 best fights in Undead Unluck. Before we get started, it'd be great if you like the video for the algorithm and subscribe for future Undead Unluck content here on the channel. Before we can jump straight into the list, we have our 3 honorable mentions, because if there were any more, this video would be twice as long. First up on the honorable mentions list is Billy vs Unruin. This is one of the last one-on-one fights in Loop 100, and it's also a pretty short fight, but the pure amount of dominance displayed by Billy here has been stuck in my brain since I read the series for the first time. This fight is entirely just the destruction of Ruin as a person, and honestly, it's so satisfying to see at this point. Up until now, Ruin had been causing complete devastation wherever he showed up, so for him to get his just desserts from Billy makes this one of the best moments in the series to me. This fight also serves as the reveal of Billy's true negation ability, Unfair. This is the conclusion to Billy's character, in Loop 100 at least, and is a perfect way to send off his arc. Next up is the Union vs Victor, the first group fight in the series. This fight is great because it's our first showcase of everyone's abilities, although they're not explicitly revealed at this point. The main draw of this fight, in my opinion, is Victor. Up until now, Shen had been dropping hints about Andy's true power, and Victor exceeded my expectations tenfold. Not only is he a threatening opponent, but he's also a peek into what Andy's full potential could be. And finally, this is specific to the anime version of this fight, but the meteor shower from Fuko's Unluck is absolutely beautiful. This fight is just a good look at what we can expect from the cast moving forward. Our final honorable mention is Andy, Fuko, Shen, and Mui vs Fang. Fang is such an amazing addition to the cast of Undead Unluck. He gives off a feeling of overwhelming power that I can't really describe in this fight. Barreling through Andy, finding a way around the rules of Undead, brushing off all of his attacks, just proves his mastery over combat and makes the situation seem that much dire. And to top things off, Fang actually kills Shen. Fang himself makes this fight one of my favorites just because of how insane he is, but Shen is what ties it all together. I came out of this fight appreciating Shen and Mui a lot more than I previously had, and this fight in general makes me like everyone involved a lot more in Loop 101 as well. Starting off the actual list, we have Andy vs Billy from the Spring arc. This fight takes 2 of my favorite characters and abilities and pits them against each other in an absolutely spectacular clash. Billy and his way of combining multiple abilities to get the advantage over his opponent never ceases to entertain me, and Andy's fighting style is, as always, an absolute blast. Not only does Andy clock every ability Billy has in his arsenal, but also comes up with counters for them, including some of the stronger abilities in the entire series like Unmove and Unchange. Billy and Andy themselves bounce off each other so well. It's actually one of my favorite dynamics in the series, and it enhances the quality of this fight greatly. Also, Great Deep Crimson Crescent Moon is Andy's coolest attack, argue with a wall. At number 9 we have Andy and Fuko vs Victor from the Autumn arc. This fight isn't very long, only lasting about 3 chapters, but it does just about everything to make itself interesting. An Andy and Victor interaction was something I desperately needed up to this point, and it definitely didn't disappoint. Seeing both Andy and Fuko become stronger and gain new techniques was so refreshing. Speaking of new techniques, this is the first fight where we learn about the soul, which would go on to become what is essentially the backbone of the entire power system. We also get more information on the previous loops and what Victor and Julius' relationship was like, as well as establishing a truce of sorts between Andy and Victor. When you get down to it, this is one of the most important fights in the manga narrative-wise. At number 8 we have Andy, Fuko, Ano-un, Rip, Latla, and Bunny vs Autumn. If there's one thing I love, it's hero and villain team-ups, and oh boy is this one hell of a goddamn team-up. This is a short fight with the actual team-up only lasting about 1.5 chapters, but it certainly leaves its impact. I got to experience this fight through the anime for the first time, and it's actually one of the deciding factors that led to me starting the manga right away. Ano's story is so captivating and fulfilling that I just can't help but want to cry every time I read this fight. On the other end, seeing Rip and Andy work together was and still is one of the most satisfying and badass moments in this arc for me. And then, of course, Ano's send-off at the end ties it all together perfectly. Coming in at number 7 is another group fight with Andy, Fuko, Chikara, and Tatiana versus Rip and Latla. The thing about this fight that I like the most is that a very large part of it takes place in frozen midair. This takes full advantage of both Chikara's on-move and Andy's strategic brain, and it's honestly just a wonderful experience. Also, on a more biased note, any fight that involves both Rip and Andy is bound to be an amazing fight for me. Their personalities, fighting styles, and even their powers just clash so incredibly well, so any scene they're in together is just guaranteed to be entertaining. This fight makes amazing use of the characters present and their powers, especially on move, turning a rather stationary fight into something exciting. At number 6 is one of the more recent fights in the manga, Fuko, Haruka, and Top versus Yuma Beast. To me, what this fight does is set the bar for the superior rule fights. Beast feels like just as much of a threat, if not more of a threat than Sick. Everything about him, from his design to his powers, is just so cool and interesting to me. There's also the fact that we finally get to see Top and Haruka in Loop 101 for this fight. These two were two of my favorite characters in Loop 100, so seeing them again was very refreshing, especially Top sporting a great new design. The biggest part of this fight is obviously the discovery of soul powers and how exactly they work. For me, this fight represents a complete turning point in the power system, and is actually what gave it the push to becoming my favorite power system. It's a huge payoff to a concept that was introduced way back in autumn, and the full circle just feels so satisfying. Starting off the top 5, we have the third fight in the entire series, Andy and Fuko versus Gina. When I originally placed this fight here, I was worried that a majority of my bias for this fight came from the anime adaptation, so I reread it for this video, and no, this fight is just as good in the manga. Gina is one of my favorite characters, and this fight is one of the main reasons why. Not only are her abilities some of my favorite, but Gina herself is just such a fun and entertaining character. For the short time she was in the series up until Loop 101, she sure left one hell of an impact. This fight in the anime is what really got me hooked to at the very least finish the rest of the season. It shows what the highest highs of Undead Unluck could look like in terms of character writing, choreography, art, and the power system, and still holds up extremely well compared to fights of today. At number 4, we have Fuko versus Spring. You know that meme where someone is thanking an anime character for changing their life, and the character is like, I don't even exist? Yeah, that's me with this fight. Fuko, up until a little bit before this point, had always played deuteragonist to Andy's protagonist role, so to see her not only take up the main stage, but also absolutely kill it while doing so, was so refreshing. Spring is a villain I didn't expect to like as much as I did in both personality and through his extremely interesting powers. Learning to love him alongside Fuko in this fight is one of the most immersive experiences in this entire manga, and I was genuinely sad when he had to die. The Spring arc in general is some of Undead Unluck's best content, and that says a lot considering Ragnarok is directly after this. Speaking of Ragnarok, starting off our top 3 is Andy versus Rip from Ragnarok. Ragnarok is already an arc that tugs at your heartstrings relentlessly, but personally, it was this fight that broke me. At this point in the story, Andy and Rip are two of my favorite characters, and after everything they've both been through up till now, having to read them fight an actual death match for arc absolutely destroyed me. These two give their absolute all fighting for what they believe is right, and it's almost hard to take a side. You can see the desperation and determination in every single one of their actions, from Rip replacing his arm with another artifact, to Andy going as far to rely on Victor for the win. And don't even get me started on Latla. When I say I cry every time I read this fight, I actually mean it. This is not only one of my favorite fights in the series, but in any manga I've ever read. Insane amounts of tension, stakes, and emotion are poured into these pages, and it delivers on all these aspects tenfold. At number 2 is the Union versus Sun. Take everything I said about the last fight and apply it here, except you know for certain that each and every one of your favorite characters besides Andy and Fuko are about to die. This fight has so many insane moments in it that I don't think I could ever write a coherent review of it if I tried, so I'll just say this. Victor and Juice's send-off was handled perfectly in every way possible. Victor and Juice are characters who have been through an unimaginable amount of pain and strife, and to see them give it their all to protect the future they entrusted to Fuko will never fail to make me emotional. After 99 loops, they finally found their 2 sparks of hope and can finally, at long last, rest. This fight is just absolutely beautiful, heart-wrenching, and hype all at the same time. However, there's one that just barely beats it out for me. At number 1, we have one of the most recent fights in the manga as of recording this video. Nico, Ichiko, and Fang versus Yuma Language. Ladies, gentlemen, and all others, I present to you one of the most creative fights I've ever read in any manga. I have always praised Undead Unluck for its amazing power system and interesting world. So what do you get when you take full advantage of both of them and raise them to an entirely different level? You get this masterpiece of a fight. As of right now, Language is my favorite superior role because of how cool her powers are. This fight takes the form of a game of Shiritori, but using all 7,000 languages in the current loop. Each word said will be manifested in reality as a way to attack or defend. Immediately you'd think this be no problem for 2 geniuses like Nico and Ichigo, but the strength of whatever they manifest in the game is dependent on how strong their imagination is. This already gives the fight an almost endless amount of potential. But to make things even better, Fang is also thrown into the fray as an extra means of firepower alongside the 2 geniuses. I didn't expect for me to like seeing Fang and Nico interact as much as I do, but they just bounce off of each other so damn well. They operate on 2 different sides of the strength spectrum, with Nico's strength coming from his intelligence and Fang dwelling on the purely physical side, which is why their interactions are so entertaining. This fight takes all of my favorite aspects of Undead Unluck and magnifies them immensely. Having the pleasure of reading this fight weekly was an experience I'd never trade away. My favorite aspect of this fight has to be the relationship of Nico and Ichiko. I think Nico's fight with Andy in Loop 100 and his reintroduction in Loop 101 being so close together adds a lot to the overall effect of this fight. By this point, we're supposed to have gotten attached to both of them a lot, and knowing what Nico's tragedy is constantly adds stakes to the fight as a whole. The fact that we need Unforgettable to win this battle at the cost of Ichiko's life is clear, but neither Nico nor us as the readers want that to happen. It all culminates into what I believe to be the best awakening in Undead Unluck. The double page spread of Nico's awakening conveys so much raw emotion that it has burned itself into my brain, however ironic that might be. And Nico's subsequent lock-in against Language and their victory just seals the deal entirely. I really could keep going on and on about this fight, but I think I've gotten my point across. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to leave a like and subscribe, and tell me what your favorite fight in Undead Unluck is down in the comments. That's it for this one.
Lately I'm feeling so cool. Yeah. Come and get a taste of the hip soul food. Spice up the animal when Neo haiku. While Soul goes to school where he slash kung fu.